Morning.
Morning, Coach.
Feels like training camp again.
What did yesterday feel like?
Not training camp.
What does training camp feel like?
Just long days, you know. I mean, having the practice in the morning, the walkthrough in the evening. So we've kind of gotten out of the routine the last week.
Is it an understatement to call us a really important week, or overstatement? I guess it'd be an overstatement to call us a really big week with New England for the practices and then that.
Well, it's a long week for sure, and that's one thing that we brought to the attention of our guys in terms of challenging them to stay focused, making sure they're taking care of their bodies, getting the adequate amount of sleep, because that's an important part of this. It is a long week. We've got a padded practice today. We're going to have 2 more against New England. Then you got the game. We'll had, you know, I'd say a lighter practice yesterday, but tomorrow will be a walkthrough. So it's going to be a long week for the guys.
You got, I would say, a relationship with Zach Taylor, so I'm sure we made that pretty easy getting their practice together. Do you know, or obviously you know about him, but do you have much of a relationship with Belichick, and what's that been like?
He's been great. We've, you know, had a couple back and forths in terms of the schedule and still finalizing all the details, but for the most part, it's been pretty smooth, and you know, he's arguably the best to ever do it. So I thought it would be in our best interest to try to, you know, learn a few things from him. You know, I've always admired how their team has played, having gone against them many times. Having them here last year, I thought, just specifically on the defense side of the ball, I thought they did a really good job of attacking the football, probably as good as anybody we played last year. So wanted to just kind of see their practice habits and how they go about their business.
You accepted the 7-on-7 from Zach that I know you're so fond of. Are there any Belichick periods that you're going to be accepting, or is that more kind of the home team sets the pattern?
No, I would say that it's pretty collaborative. We don't have any 7-on scheduled, but no, it's been just working through everything together.
You mentioned,
Go ahead.
you mentioned yesterday a couple times you really like the play style of the guys on Friday night in Cincinnati. What's the key to maintaining that game to game? Because that can maybe be something that gets taken for granted.
Well, I think you got to demand it, and it's not just on game day. It's every rep, and that's something that we're charting, making sure that guys are giving max effort, and if you need a sub, get somebody else in there. But it was far from perfect in terms of guys executing all the calls and their assignments, but I think you can overcome some of that when you have guys flying to the football. I mean, shoot, one of the last pressures that we got on their quarterback, I think it was on Simeon, where it was close to being a fumble. I mean, we totally botched that, but nobody would ever notice that because our guys went out there. They were all on the same page. We just were on a different page as a staff. So, you know, sometimes they gotta go out there, and they're the ones out there playing, and did a good job of playing fast, and good things happen, or tend to happen when you're out there just cutting it loose and playing 100 miles an hour.
Hey Matt, when you have a play in a preseason game that you don't quite hit on, but you know is something that you're going to want to go back to during the season, what's the process for making sure that, you know, you correct that, and that's a play that, you know, hey, it didn't work in the preseason game, but we're going to use this at some point?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of those examples, I would say. I think it just boils back down to making sure obviously you're going to correct it on the tape, but you have to at some point go back and do it, whether it's typically you walk through it, and then you go out there and you perform it live and at full speed. So I would say that's usually kind of the process that we go through.
Were there a couple of those in practice yesterday? It seemed like there may have been a play or two that you ran again that looked a little bit like plays that were in the game that you maybe didn't hit on.
Sure, yeah, I think that's always the case. And then it's plays off of plays. So, and there was a couple plays that yesterday that really on both sides of the ball, but specifically there were a couple things that we presented from an offensive standpoint to our defense where they were letting guys loose, and obviously can't have that.
And I know you're practicing inside today, but do you work with wet footballs in training camp, or do you wait until the regular season for that and when you know that the forecast...
The old wet ball question. not a huge fan of that, to be honest with you. You know, I know some coaches are. I've experienced some guys dunking the balls into the water, and I think it's totally unrealistic. But usually they're trying to cover them up out there. Not to say that they're not going to get a little wet, but that's not something that I prescribe to. I think it's gimmicky as all get out. But
do you get anything different from Samari Toure and Jaden Reed in the slot? Are they different when you put them in the slot, a different type of players, or do you get pretty much the same thing out of them?
I think they're both different players, but they've got similar movement skills, I would say. So I think they're both capable of doing whatever we ask them to do. It's a matter of, you know, who's fresh, who do we want to get in there, and but I think both those guys have done a nice job up to this point. I think that was evident in the game. That Samari really made a couple nice plays. Obviously had that off-schedule play, but he caught a tight window slant from the slot early. I want to say it might have been on Sean's first possession. So I was really impressed with his performance. And then Jaden Reed had a couple nice plays. Obviously, the most notable was the crossing route over the middle where he went up high to go get that ball.
What was the thought process on Rashid with the ones yesterday? Was that just a one-time look, or was that based on something you saw in the preseason game?
Well, he's been playing really well, and you know, everything is earned, and certainly you're gonna we all know Dave is gonna be holding that side down, but like we're trying to find best five.
What have you thought about Anthony Johnson?
I think he's done a great job. You can certainly see his speed, his athleticism. He made plays on teams, which is absolutely critical. But I thought he went in there and outside of the dropped interception, I thought he played pretty well. I mean, he's got to make that play. He knows it. We know it. Those ops are few and far between. But I think he's done a great job. He loves football. I think RD and G Money have done a good job with him, and Hoodie, and he loves it. He's totally invested into it and is doing a really nice job for us.
As well as you got to know Jordan's first 3 years here, is there anything you've learned about him this offseason, this camp? Now that he's been like, a clear-cut number one guy that you either didn't know or kind of couldn't have known before?
I wouldn't say that. I think what we've seen is, he's taken ownership of it, and that's obviously really tough to do when you're the backup. And I've experienced that with other guys, whether it's a Kirk Cousins when we were in Washington, you can kind of see when they get their opportunity how they command it, and it's been cool to see him grow and get more comfortable being the guy. And I think, I don't know about you guys, but yesterday at practice, you could see he was out there with a little swag, and I thought he was out there executing at a high level too. And so that's kind of fun to see these guys just grow right before your eyes.
Coach, speaking of Jordan, it looks like, out layman's terms, like there's a bit of an uptick in your play action game as far as, I don't know what you're installing, what have you, but are there keys to a young first-time starter who you're bringing him along, but he's got to get his head around and trust the protection, turn his back to the defense? Is that something that you can drill, or is that something you emphasize?
Yeah, I think there's nothing better than getting those reps, specifically game reps, but even in practice, I think you have to drill it. First of all, you take the individual to the team, because it's not comfortable when you have your back to the defense. And you watch in college football how many teams are really doing that nowadays. So it is different for them. There's a lot of trust involved with that in terms of not only the protection scheme, but even in the play calls, trying to attack the right things. And then just getting your eyes in the right spot, and you got to make quick decisions. But I do think it provides, if you set it up the right way, it can give the quarterbacks a little bit more time in the pocket, hopefully a cleaner pocket. I think it's really, really difficult to drop back in this league, and because it's not solely on the quarterback. I mean, you gotta try to block these creatures that they're producing up front. So there's a lot of good pass rushers in this league, and it's not. It definitely is easier on everybody when you have elements of play action.
You had two scrums in Cincinnati. What are your views on that? It's pretty common throughout the league in joint practices. Is that just intensity, or is that something you don't want to see ever?
I mean, you really want to take it to that line. You just don't ever want to cross that line. Anything that you would do in a game that would get you penalized, you really don't want to see it in practice. It's just about maintaining your poise, maintaining your discipline, because you know the ramifications. If you throw a punch in a game, you're gone. So obviously, just trying to get really good competitive work throughout the duration of the practice, and so you never want to see it.
Matt, can you explain what the challenge is for Jordan Love to throw deep, given mechanically and both mentally, as to what he has to do to get that?
Well, I think every situation, I don't think it's just one thing. It's like, what is the look the defense is giving you? How's the route being ran? How's the coverage? How fast does the safety get over the top? Whatever it may be. So I don't think you can just put that in a box and answer that question. I think there's so many different layers to it in terms of, well, what ball is he throwing? Is he throwing a post? Is he throwing a go? Is he throwing a field post? You know, is he throwing a high cross? It's just, there's a lot of elements to it. Certainly one thing that we've talked with him about specifically is trying to get a little bit more air under some of those balls, and I think he did a really nice job of that the other night on the one to Christian. It's just the safety has pretty good speed, and he got a good jump on it. So, but everything's a little bit, I'd say every situation's a little bit different.
Do guys sometimes have difficulty leading, thinking they're going to overthrow the guy? You know, like with Christian Watson, I assume you can't really overthrow him much, but on some of those, does he need to just let it go and let Christian Watson catch up with that in some way?
Yeah, I think that's why the beauty of, if you put air under the ball, usually the wideouts can adjust to it a little bit easier. So that's just something that we've been stressing to him. However, the more air you put under the ball, so the DBs have a chance to adjust to it as well. So that's why it's not a real simplistic answer, I'd say.
With practice inside today, did you have to rearrange anything with your script? Are you guys still in pads? Is there anything that you have to do?
Yeah, we're still in pads. Everything's a go. Obviously, would love to get outside. Don't ever want to go on the turf, but it is what it is, and you got to make the best of the situation. And we still need to get the work in. I mean, what is this, our 16th practice or whatever it is? So you just can't afford to not practice. I think it's still good for us, but certainly would much rather be outside.